Right, hi folks. My apologies for the late running of this. Was a technical error. So, hello, my name's Tony Martin. I'm editor of the Vegan Organic Networks magazine, Growing Green International. This is a production of the Vegan Organic Network, Veganic Gardeners Question Time. Unfortunately, I practiced this 3 times. Every time it worked, and of course, the time we go live, it fails. Anyway, forgive us for that, and we'll move on. So if you've got any questions, please add them into the comments section and we'll try and answer them in the end. Or if we run out of time, we'll try and include them in the next show. So tonight I'd like to welcome on the show Piers Warren. And excuse me a second. So we have, first of all, Piers Warren. And now Piers Warren is from Wales, UK. He's a conservationist, author and keen grower of organic fruit and veg. He currently lives on the edge of the sea in West Pembrokeshire, where he grows as much of his own food as possible in his garden and allotment plot. He's the writer of numerous books, including most recently The Vegan Cook and Gardener, and has a regular article in Growing Green International. Welcome, Piers.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Okay. Next, we have Aranya. And Aranya lives in Cornwall in England. He's been vegan since 1984. He spent 5 years in animal rescue before becoming immersed in the benefits of permaculture. Over the years, Aranya's taught nearly 100 permaculture design courses, and his first book, Permaculture, A Step-by-Step Guide, is one of the best sellers of permanent publications. Hello, Aranya.
Hello. Hi, Tony. Hi, Piers. Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Right, and finally we have Peter Albrecht. I believe I pronounced that roughly right. Fantastic. Peter's an animal rights activist, human ecologist master, turned veganic farmer. He moved into the country 10 years ago to prove that it's possible to farm veganically. His farm is in Vanga in Sweden, where he grows veggies and fruit for the family and trade with others. He also grows seed for the firm Nordfro, hopefully not too bad. Teaches permaculture and veganic growing. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
All right. Right. So we're going to move to our first question. Now, I've just added Rob to the stream. Hello, Rob. How are you doing?
Hello, Tony, and hello, panel.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Right. So would you like to ask your question for the panel?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I wanted to develop a forest garden on the north side of a row of mature deciduous trees. I measured them today, and some of them are about 20 meters high. Part of the plot is directly under the trees, and so gets very little sunlight when they're in leaf. Other parts of the plot get some sun first thing in the morning and late afternoon and evening. There's nettles and some non-food bushes are the only things that seem to be growing under the trees at the moment. What I want to do is to attempt to sow ramsons and wild garlic. Ramsons, bleak wild garlic there. But I'm really keen to do this forest garden. So are you, the panel, agreeing with the plan to have a forest garden there at all in such a location? Have you any other ideas for what edible perennials I might plant under these trees, please?
Okay, I believe, Peter, you were going to give a first shot at this?
Yeah, so hi, Rob.
Hi, Peter.
Just some questions. The trees that are shading out the property, is it are they your trees, or is it neighbor trees, or?
They're neighbor trees. That's why I can't chop them down. Not that I want to chop down mature trees, but they are neighbors.
So on the first run, I had a suggestion. Maybe they were yours. I would have suggested taking down 1 or 2 and to have mushrooms. So it would be a very good spot for growing mushrooms within the shade here. But but you can still do it if it's heavy shade. You can still have mushrooms there. Otherwise, I will have a suggestion for the bigger, the higher trees that you might be able to have there. So I will think where you have part shade, you can have medlars.
Oh yeah.
Mespelus germanica. I have them in semi-shade. Mine get maybe 5 hours sun in the summertime, 4 or 5 hours, and they still do really well. And then we also have a sour cherry, which is also going to be a big tree, which also does well in shaded areas.
Right.
And I mean, is it you want a lot of fruiting trees and the usual thoughts you get when you say forest garden, or you have any special interest or some special things you want to get out of having a forest garden?
Well, I grow perennial vegetables in my front garden at the moment, and this is a bit of field that I have access to. So I basically want to grow whatever I can eat.
Oh yeah.
Not just fruit.
No.
I do actually think that perennial, society generally is living too much on annuals, and I believe in perennials, and I want to sort of prove it in the bit of field I've got access to.
Okay, so I will mention some more of my favorites, and then I also let the other ones get in. So I would also try to grow elderberry. Also do okay in shaded. Yeah, elderberry. Yeah. And there's even some. I have a pepper tree, Szechuan pepper tree, also in quite deep shade, doing all right. You know, you don't need so much Szechuan pepper.
No.
So I mean, if you get a handful, it can be all right for the whole season. Then in the rest, and then you also, I mean, then I go directly to some more that's more similar to normal annual vegetable crops. Yeah. And there you have like the hosta.
Yeah.
And
I do have a slug problem as well.
You have a slug problem?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I say it's a problem. I mean, let's put it this way: I share the field with slugs.
Oh, you share the field. Okay. Yeah. So you might have to put something in front of that it rather eats.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, are you finished?
Peter, thank you.
Yeah. So Aranya, I believe you wanted to comment on this as well.
Yeah, there's a number of different aspects here. It's interesting. Martin Crawford's forest garden, he has loads of hostas because the undergrowth that he has is really good for encouraging ground beetles, and ground beetles eat little slugs before they get big slugs. So he has loads of hostas, and there's not a single slug hole in any of them. So you kind of have to establish the environment first, but then you can put hostas in later. And I suppose what often you don't have when you're establishing a forest garden, the last thing you have is shade. So actually, on some level, you're ahead of the game.
Okay.
I'm not completely clear whether it's completely north facing or whether you get some morning sun or evening sun, because Peter obviously is saying things that will do part shade. So I'm not quite sure what your situation is. But
okay, well, basically the trees in the summer provide a complete screen from the south. They're almost along the due south border.
Okay.
But being in Yorkshire, where I am, the sun does come into this area in first thing in the morning from the east, and it sets in the west, a bit north of this line of trees. So I get sun late afternoon and evening.
Yeah, so they're through the summer months. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the winter the trees are all bare. So, but then there's no sun. Well, there is some sun, but not much.
Yeah. I think sort of any of those perennial alliums will be happy either on the edge or going in underneath. You say wild garlic ramsons, they are quite invasive, so you're going to have to love them.
I do. I love them. I celebrate. I've even written poems about them.
Oh, great. Then perfect. But there are some lovely other alliums like Babington's Leek and so on, that perennial alliums that would work well in that environment. And I mean, in terms of fruit, red currants do really well under shade as well. And we're growing Japanese butterbur here in the shade, which is quite a big plant. It looks a bit like a cross between rhubarb and gunner, I suppose, but with rounded leaves. But it's big, and it's called fuki in Japan. You eat it as a vegetable in the spring.
All right.
Japanese butterbur. It's Petasites japonica, I think. So.
Right.
Okay. Would you like to add? Oh, sorry.
So the other thing to look out for, of course, is competition from the tree root systems, which might be a problem with things like ash and poplar in particular. So just
one of the big trees is sycamore, and another is lime, and there is a beech there as well.
Okay, so quite a dense canopy. Yeah.
Thank you, Aranya.
Okay,
thank you, Aranya.
Piers, would you like to add anything to this, or?
The other guys mentioned all the species I was going to suggest, so I've got nothing more to add.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Piers. Thank you very much for your question, Rob.
Well, thank you very much indeed for all your answers. Thank you.
I hope to see you again sometime.
Enjoy.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Yeah, bye.
Right. Okay, moving on to question number 2. My butternut squash plants and leaves withered and died. From 5 plants, I got 2 butternut squash. The seeds were from Real Seeds, which is an organic seed company. Burgess Buttercup. I had 1 plant in full sun, baking conditions at times, and the others in partial shade. The one in full sun did marginally better. Do you think it was because of our dry, windy summer? Planted with plenty of compost and watered more or less daily as conditions in my garden are very hot. Soil is chalky. Thank you, Carol. And I believe, Piers, you wanted to lead on this one.
Yes, well, I think it sounds like you're pretty much doing the right things. They do like a lot of sun, and they do like a lot of moisture. So planting with plenty of compost and watering daily if it's not raining is all the right things. I think it's been a bad year for butternut squash in general, and I think it is, as you say, because of the heat and the wind. For myself, I planted equal numbers of pumpkin plants and butternut squash plants this year, and when I checked the other day, I've got 21 pumpkin fruits and only 5 butternut squash. So I've had a very similar experience this year. And sometimes it's hard to explain why, apart from the weather, but I have found sometimes that you do get a bad year for seeds or a bad run of seeds from a particular supplier. So sometimes I've tried butternut squash seeds and they've been pathetic, and the next year seeds from a different supplier have been fantastic. So I don't think it's wholly the weather, but at least it sounds like you're doing the right things. Try again next year.
Okay. Thank you, Piers. Now, I believe Aranya has got some stuff on this and about heat-treated compost, which I found very interesting when we chatted earlier. So, Aranya.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. So essentially, I would agree with Piers. I mean, we've grown 2 types of curry this year, and they've not been very happy at all. One thing we've had a lot of is powdery mildew, which we had on our peas, sugar sap peas as well. But what you have to generally avoid is places that don't get morning sun, because if you've got something that's vulnerable to powdery mildew, because the moisture stays on the leaf and that encourages it. But our squashes were out in the open and they were still getting it. And what happens is the leaf gets covered and it can't photosynthesize. So it just basically has to let go of that one to make another one. So we had a similar problem. And of course, so the nutrients also very important. And we've just been here a year, so this is our first growing season in our new place. And one thing we didn't bring with us was our compost heap, of course, because that's just a big thing. So we got a whole load of just kind of green waste compost in, and it came on a lorry from a place nearby, and it came off the lorry and it was steaming. It was that kind of it's hot compost, but it's hot because it's made in bulk. And it looks like good stuff, and it's obviously got lots of organic matter in it, but the problem with it is that it has no life in it, because of course it gets up to 70 odd degrees and everything dies. It's essentially sterile, and then you've got all these nutrients, but there's no life in the soil to convert the nutrients into plant food. And so we've had lots of mushrooms come up because it's fantastic for fungi to get in there and sort of continue breaking down that material, but the nutrient availability has been pretty poor. So it has been interesting just comparing the different, because of course the summer, the spring was very interesting getting compost. I don't know if anybody else had that problem, but you know, you ring people up, no, we're not doing anything because of the virus. So so we had to get what we could, and it's been interesting just comparing that kind of stuff and what we had over here, and it's been quite different. And the seaweed we collected off the beach in the spring has been the very best, but of course it's just literally down the road from us. So yeah, so just look out for that. If you get that, ideally it needs a compost tea, which is basically microbes multiplied with sugar and oxygen, ideally in water, and then you just put it on. There's good recipes for that. If you look up compost teas, plenty of recipes online. There we go, aerobic with the stirring or the bubbling, but it's good.
Brilliant. Thank you, Aranya. Is there anything you'd like to add to that at all, Peter?
We also had quite a tough season. I was waiting for a long time. I think we had similar weather to you guys. We had all the rain in the beginning of the spring, and then it was quite heated here also. So we had a tough time, and we grow for seeds, but so they're not really matured yet. The beginning they wouldn't set any squash. So, but I don't have a good analytic sense about what's wrong. So I'm gonna try next year again.
Thank you, Peter. Right, so we'll move on to question 3. I've heard that runner beans can be perennials. If so, what's the best way of storing them for the next season in the UK? What advantages are to doing this rather than saving a seed? And also, what disadvantages are there? Also, are there any other common veg that I can do this? And this is Tom from Hounslow. And I believe, Piers, do you want to start with this question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Tom. So the short answer is yes, runner beans can be perennials. It's really, the way you manage that is all down to how frosty your patch is. So, for example, if you live in an area which has very little frost or only a very light frost, like I do, living close to the sea, then you can leave the runner bean roots in the ground, just chop them up just above ground level when they've all finished and the leaves have dropped off. And if you are expecting a very light frost, you could put piles of mulch on the ground above where the roots are, and they will overwinter, and then in the spring they'll shoot again. You may need to protect them at that stage because they may start growing before the risk of cold weather has passed. So if that's the case, then put some sort of cloche or half a plastic bottle over each plant or something like that to protect them. If you're in an area which has heavy frosts, then that may well kill the roots off even in the ground. So in that situation, I would dig the roots up and bring them into a frost-free building, whether that's a shed or a greenhouse maybe, and store them over winter in a something like a leaf mold mixture, a bit like you would with geranium roots or something like that. And then in the spring, you can pot them up and grow them on, and then plant them outside in position when the risk of frosts has passed. The advantages of doing this are that you get an earlier crop from a stronger plant than if you had just sown a seed. But I would always recommend saving some seeds as well, which you can plant later on, and then you'll get a later crop from those. So definitely I'd say combine the two approaches. As for the other plants that you can do this with, well, of course, a lot of our vegetable plants are naturally perennial. Things like asparagus, globe and Jerusalem artichokes, rhubarb, and a lot of herbs that we grow, like chives, mint, oregano, sage. A lot of those will die down over winter and then come up again in the spring. But there are others that are less commonly grown, which can be treated as perennials. One of which I grow here is a tree cabbage, which is, there's another variety called walking stick cabbage, which is quite popular in America. But here, the tree cabbage, it just grows as a bush, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, and you can just harvest leaves as you want to, and that keeps growing year after year. Other possibilities that are similar are you can get a perennial broccoli, kale, of course, will keep going, and then there's a number of alliums which will act as perennials as well, like the Welsh onion, wild garlic, Babington's leek, and then some others like radicchio, horseradish, and ochre. They can all be grown as perennials as well. So it's quite a good choice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Piers. And I believe, Anne, you've got some thoughts on this as well.
Well, it's covered a lot there. I suppose the one reason you might want to start again from seed, or to basically bring them indoors but then replant them again, is if you're on some kind of rotation. So if you're deliberately rotating your crops to keep disease and so on. Of course, by keeping a plant going through, you get earlier crops, but also the potential of taking disease, whereas seed to seed, if that makes sense, is a better way of cutting. If you've got a disease problem and you want to break that cycle, that might be an easier way of doing it. Yes, the one other perennial which I totally love is yacon. I don't know if you guys grow that at all, but it grows, basically you grow it as the crown. It's tender, so you have to do what Piers is saying, is basically bring it in for the winter, put the crowns in a pot or multiple pots if you've got plenty of it, because each year you can divide it. And it's a tuber, kind of like ochre, but quite different from ochre. And you have the crown, which is the central part, and it grows during the year, puts up these almost sunflower-like plants, but with tiny little flowers on that the bees love, actually. And then it makes tubers off the main crown each year, and then you take up the crown, you take the tubers off, and they're the bits you eat, and you keep the crown for the following year. And the only challenge I have with it is, as Piers says, it wants to grow before it's ready to go out, so you have this kind of balance of trying to slow it down and stop until it's ready to put it out. But we grow it in pots mostly because rodents also love them. So but yacon, if you can get it, fantastic. You start with one and you just keep multiplying. They're really good. So you can basically, they look like a potato that kind of tastes like a cross between a crispy pear and water chestnut, and if you cook them, they stay crisp as well, so they're good in a stir fry. But we just tend to slice them, put them in salad over the winter, and it's just very, very nice. So highly recommended. Yacon.
Yeah, thank you, Aranya. Peter, at all, is there any ones you'd like to recommend? Or
I would also recommend, usually or if you grow at home and not in selling your stuff, I usually leave everything in the ground, especially kales, what form of kale it is, even, broccoli and green kale and everything. And after a cold season, even though we have it cold here, usually in early spring, before you get anything else up, it's small leafy vegetables come up from the base of basically everything you can grow. So before, in the autumn, you shouldn't rip up all the plants, leave them in the ground and see what is able to come up also next year. So usually they go in flower the second year, and before they go flowering, you can have some of that crop sprouts or early baby leaves or something, or like small leaves.
Brilliant, good advice, thank you. Lovely. Okay, so moving on to question 4. Just a quick question, this one, but would love advice on how to grow coriander all year round, from Alwyn. Anyone like to take that?
I think you probably need lights, grow lights. I mean, certainly I was trying to grow it over the winter, and we've got what's a conservatory, but it's north facing, so it's a bit of a strange situation, but we've inherited it. And it's double glazed, so it never goes below 0. The temperature was all right. We were growing lots of different salady things, and the Mabuna and Mitsuna and so on do really well over the winter. But the coriander just sat there and didn't do anything. So I think it's not just about temperature, it's about, it needs enough light. So you might be able to do it with light. I mean, it's very nice. I love coriander, but it could be a struggle. And also, of course, in the summer, stopping it from flowering is a bit easier because you can just find a shady place to put it so it doesn't get too much sun. But the winter, I think, is your main challenge.
Right, thank you. Anyone else at all? No. Okie doke. Thank you for that, Aranya. So moving on to question 5. My partner and I have different ideas about how small back gardens should be planted out. I would like it to be an oasis of colour, and Shirley would like it to be for growing food. Can the panel suggest some plants that will satisfy both of us? Thanks, Karen and Shirley.
Oh, yes.
Piers. Hello, Piers. What would you like?
Yeah, just a few suggestions. One is, of course, don't forget that some plants have extremely attractive, colourful leaves. So it's not just the flowers we're talking about. So, for example, Swiss chard, if you get the rainbow mixed seeds, they're just beautiful in a bed. And others like purple kale, again, it's a beautiful, colourful plant to mix in with other flowering plants. Then we've got some pretty impressive flowers, which I would definitely put in an ornamental garden, such as globe artichoke, which produces the most amazing big flowers that bees absolutely love. And also quinoa. You can grow quinoa in the UK. They're big plants. They can get up to 6 foot tall, but they produce large flowering clusters. And also you can get them in different colours as well. So that's a possibility. And of course, don't forget the herbs that we grow, which produce beautiful flowers like chives, thyme, lavender. Also, all of those very good for bees and other insects as well. So, yeah, and all edible and ornamental.
Brilliant, thank you, Piers. I'd like to add a couple of things there. That nasturtiums I found grow very well and are a good ground cover. Very beautiful, edible. If they cook, they lose their heat. They're quite hot without cooking. And tulips, I've been surprised. I've tried a number of different tulip petals now, and the variation between sweet and quite hot, it really surprised me what a difference were between them. And if you look online, you'll find that there are various varieties which are particularly tasty. It's worth getting hold of those if you can. And obviously you get chive flowers, things like that as well. And if anyone's ever smelt broad bean flowers, they smell like rose, which is amazing. It surprised the heck out of me first time I tried that. So would anyone else like to add to that?
Peter? I've got a couple of things, but Peter wants
to.
So
I always put in, I translated it here on Google, so I hope it's right. Tree spinach. It's like a really tall, spinachy type of leafy veggie with like a pinkish, powdery color on the leaves. So many also only think it's ornamental. I have it like in my drive-in where I go into the house and people think it's just for ornament, but then it's also really, really tasty, even more than I like it even more than regular spinach. And I would say also daylilies, you can eat them, the bud and the flowers. And so that's my two contributions.
Yeah, they are nice daylilies, aren't they? Yeah, I think Aranya's had them as well. So, Aranya?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about daylilies is they literally only last a day. So if you eat them, you're not losing them for the next. Tomorrow's flowers haven't come out yet. So, yeah, and even things like sunflowers. We've had absolute hilarity here this week because the squirrels have discovered the sunflowers and they've been on along the fence and basically grabbing the sunflower heads and pulling them down, and they've stripped. And one of the sunflowers still has the pattern like a honeycomb, but they've just taken out every single sunflower seed. It is hilarious. So, and just there's so many flowers that you might grow as part of a companion planting setup anyway. So, poached eggplant, for instance, attracts hoverflies, which are good because they feed on the larvae, feed on aphids and so on. So you've got all of these different things. It could be in the garden as system plants, so they can be beautiful and doing something useful towards, producing food in other places. So yeah, lots of options. I mean, if in doubt, just get hold of the organic gardening catalogue or something, and just have a look at the pictures.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you for that. Excellent. Right, now we've got a quite specific question now, number 6. I'll read it out, and I think unless anyone's got any particular expertise on this, we might have to give a more generic answer to this. So it's a dear panel. I've grown dwarf Cape gooseberries, physalis, in pots outside. I've got quite a few very small fruits, even though I have no knowledge of their growing requirements. Can you let me know the best way to grow Cape gooseberries for a good crop next year? Although I've grown them outside, albeit in pots, can I overwinter them in the greenhouse? Similarly, I've grown hibiscus, I'm not going to try and pronounce the next bit, plants in a 3-litre pot. I started them off indoors on the windowsill, and they are now in the greenhouse. They are about 4 foot tall, but so far haven't produced any flowers or fruits, which I want to make tea. What sort of growing conditions do they require? What sort of soil, water, or no water, no sun, etc.? I hope you can help. Denise Berry, Rufford Farm in East Sussex, UK. So if anyone would like to give the correct name for hibiscus, I'll be very much obliged. Okay, I'll try and pronounce it.
I just say hibiscus, but that may not be absolutely true.
It's Sabderifer rosella, or something along those lines. Anyway, I'm sure someone knows better than me. So,
okay.
Would anyone like to give a general comment on this if they haven't any specific experience?
It's quite specific, isn't it? I mean, I've grown hibiscus syriacus one year, beautiful flowers, but I didn't get many from seed. So yeah, and I don't drink teas, so it's not something I really explore. For Solis, I've grown. Tomatillos are easier. They're a bit tougher. They're the bigger ones. They're hardier. We grew those in Ireland quite easily over winter, because generally we tend to grow physalis as annuals in this country, but you can some of them do perennialize depending on where you are. I imagine bringing them in a pot over winter would probably be okay. If you're putting them in an unheated greenhouse, keeping them off the ground might be better, because cold air tends to sink, so it tends to be colder on the ground than it is on a bench, for instance. But beyond that, I don't really know. I don't have enough experience with that, really.
Well, would it be worth, for instance, placing the pot into the ground in the greenhouse if it's available? Or do you think it's not more about the roots, it's more about the actual plant itself that's been damaged by the cold, do you think?
Piers and Peter both have.
Yeah, I was just, right, I think Peter was first, so Peter?
Yeah, okay. So I have good, I had a plant 5 years ago in the greenhouse, and it self-seeds in my greenhouse, which is a cold greenhouse. It's not totally perfect, but I don't have to pre-cultivate these ones. They self-seed. Somewhere there's the fruit falling down, and it grows and it comes up between the tomatoes or the cucumbers. So I don't see it as a problem. I don't really see the point of trying to overwinter that individual plant. Actually, with some stuff it has some benefits, but this one I don't see it if you don't really want to have something. I don't know, that really early.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter.
So my self-seeding ones, they're already.
Sorry, do carry on, Peter.
I think he's finished.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that I've grown them most successfully in the greenhouse, and as well as the more protected environment, it also means that they won't be gobbled up by birds who do love Cape gooseberries. And if birds are eating them, then they can be spreading the seeds all over your plot, so you can have the plants coming up all over the place next year. So yes, if you have a greenhouse, then definitely give them a go in there next year.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Piers. So sorry, Randy, carry on.
It's always, is it worth the effort of keeping them alive over winter for the benefit you get in the spring compared to starting again? That's just the question to ask.
It's a good question. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I don't know if anyone's seen any questions on the stream at all they've picked up on and would like us to answer. We've got a few minutes left.
No, there's nothing much on the stream. No.
On the comments, there've been quite a few comments coming in about how the questions sessions are run on these shows, and so just to explain to people that we have a number of questions that are sent in advance, and it's just the way it's done on Radio 4's Gardeners Question Time, really. Of course they have the questions lined up so they know what they're going to be, and so we tackle these first because people have had time to think about what they want to ask and to explain the situation. And then it all depends on the time. If we've answered all the questions and we've got a bit of time over, then we can tackle others that have come up on the chat during the show. But sometimes we just don't have the time for new ones. But looking at what some people are saying, we could certainly try some other future shows where instead of having pre-sent in questions, we actually tackle questions live. Of course, the risk there is that you might have nobody asking any questions that time, but we could have a few in reserve maybe if there aren't any. But, thanks for raising up these issues because it's always good to have feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Piers. Yes, please, feedback is always appreciated because we're doing the show for you, and without your feedback, we can just do our best, but we don't know if we're getting there. So, yeah, and also if you put in any questions, then we'll try and incorporate them in the next show as well. Obviously, we can give you better quality answers where they're sent in beforehand. So if you can send them in beforehand, we'd really appreciate it. Unless anyone else has got anything to add this evening. Anyone?
Joe mentioned amaranth, which I thought about as a beautiful plant. Love Lies Bleeding is often, as a flower, but you can also eat it as a seed. So,
okay.
Yes, I had mine as private chat, so I could only see what we'd written, which was nothing much. I was thinking, where are the comments? And then,
yeah, look at the comments. Yeah, so Teresa has just asked the question, is there such a thing as veganic potting compost that you can buy? I don't know if you guys know.
Yes, there is. And funny enough, I've got 70 bags of 60 litres arriving on Thursday. I do monkey puzzle trees and I needed some. I couldn't make enough of my own this year. I can't remember the company name, but I will try and put it in onto the YouTube when we put that up live. But I just did a search for veganic compost. It's based on coconut coir with various additions, and it is vegan and it is organic. And they don't do it just in pallet loads, they do it in smaller amounts as well. So you can get that, yes. And there are some other companies as well that do it. So yes. Okay. I'll just have a look to see if there's any other questions. Right.
Yes, it would be
thank you very much.
If this was the questions were highlighted with some kind of colour. If there's a question mark, so it's I've been on certain things, but it actually shows that it's a question.
Right, very useful to know.
But
yeah,
it doesn't seem
so excuse any hiccups in the show. This is my first time, and we did have a little technical hiccup at the start. So we survived to the end. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Peter, Aranya, and Piers. Hopefully we'll see you again sometime. To everyone else out there, please do go to our website, veganorganic.net, where you can find further information on veganic growing. And please like and share our posts, subscribe to our newsletter, and if you can join us, that will be very much appreciated. So thank you all, and good night. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye.
Hey, do.
Right. And with luck,